Community engagement, or public involvement, is all about ensuring that people have a voice in how their transportation systems are developed. The transportation community may find it challenging to involve the public in a meaningful way. Still, quality planning and project development require meaningful input from the public. Many members of the public are genuinely interested in what is happening in their community, but do not know how they can effectively provide input to influence the outcome of a transportation plan or project. How does a transportation agency grab and hold the public's interest in a project or plan and convince people that active involvement is worthwhile? How does an agency provide the means for the public to have direct and meaningful impacts on decisions? Here are some of the many tools for getting meaningful input from the public on transportation plans, programs, and projects that can help agencies improve their overall public involvement techniques. When we talk about involving the public in transportation, what do we mean? Well, the public includes anyone who resides, works, has an interest in, or does business in a given area potentially affected by transportation decisions, including organized groups. It is important to note that private and public transportation service providers also have the opportunity to participate, and you should encourage people of color, low-income communities, older populations, and others traditionally underserved by transportation systems to participate in transportation planning. The public is a rich source of ideas, full of people who can contribute to improving their transportation systems. Community members intimately know their region's transportation issues and challenges and are invested in seeing short and long-term improvements come to fruition. That's why it's so critical to ensure a strong public engagement effort from the outset of a project until well after it's in operation. Besides the valuable, necessary input gathered from public engagement, there are several other important considerations as you begin your outreach planning. First, compliance with federal regulations. As well, full representation and inclusion. Third, establishing effective strategies for planning. And finally, making it meaningful. The first of those things, federal law. Federal statutes and regulations provide general guidelines for public involvement. Transportation agencies have great flexibility in developing plans for public involvement and participation. Techniques for each situation may differ, depending on things like demographics and specific impacts of a project, but the general approach to developing those strategies should contain elements that are relevant to all communities. Next up, full representation and inclusion. Outreach to all potential participants leads to representation from the broad and varied segments of the communities that you serve. It's important to reach people who are not used to participating in transportation planning. Transportation systems that reflect the needs of the people they serve will not exist without full representation during planning. Community members bring different abilities, needs, and distinct perspectives on transportation. Third on our list, effective strategies for planning. Good organization and well-planned outreach distinguishes a public involvement effort that is aimless and high-level from one that is purposeful, grounded, specific, and productive. In initiating public involvement in transportation, agencies must begin with clearly defined planning goals that focus on specific issues to be addressed, the kinds of input needed, and the parts of the public that should be involved. The more specific a public involvement plan, the greater its chances of producing input that an agency can use in decision-making. Once the what of an overall strategy is in place, an agency has to determine the who that the strategy will serve and how the strategy will serve them. You should carefully orchestrate ways to contact people, give people the information they need, hear and document their views, respond to their feedback, and incorporate all of their concerns. Good organization establishes a systematic, planned approach to working with people so that an agency receives the information it needs at the right time. Good organization also allows room for flexibility and openness as needed. And finally, meaningful involvement. While meetings with stakeholders, community leaders, and the public are vital to achieving the best outcomes, meaningful involvement means acting on public comments and feedback. A top-down style of interacting with the public can lead to meetings that are scheduled at inconvenient times, projects that are unveiled late in the process, public involvement limited to taking comments at public hearings, and several other undesirable outcomes. Meaningful involvement, on the other hand, gets the public to become active participants in the transportation planning process. Prior to starting your public engagement process, it's important to establish your overall plan to identify goals and desired outcomes that will help determine the right strategy for the engagement. Not all public participation is the same. There are levels at which you might wish to engage with the public based on the project, the stakeholders, and the decisions to be made. These 5 useful tips will help you begin to plan for public engagement. Number 1, select the right level of public participation. To identify the appropriate level of public participation for your project, you should first consider how much influence the public will have over the decision or action. This could vary from providing feedback to directly involving members of the public into the decision-making process. The techniques you use will vary depending on the desired level of engagement. Determine at the outset what information is needed, when it is needed, and how it will be incorporated into decision-making. Make this context clear to all participants so they understand how their input will affect the plan or project. Second, enlist trusted spokespeople. The most effective outreach message will be conveyed by people who are trusted by your community. Think about whom you want to reach out to and whom your target audience trusts. Enlist those people to help you plan and design your engagement strategies. Seek their feedback on whether the intended scope, substance, and style of the meeting are likely to be beneficial both to your agency and your participants. You can also ask them to directly reach out to their constituents and explain why they should participate. Next, meet with community groups to discuss and set up a meeting schedule. Use this type of active outreach to recruit individuals and organizations to participate. Personal interaction, in person or over the phone, creates a stronger connection with people and increases an organizer's ability to convey the importance of an event. You can also identify meeting dates and a schedule that works for community members. Optimize participation by asking what kinds of meetings should take place and how often they should occur. Next up, consider the scope and substance of your meetings. Outline the goals of a meeting in advance so that participants can be prepared to comment and offer suggestions. Consider if general meetings need to be supplemented by others focused on specific topics for specialized audiences. Share findings and ask if further development or discussion of individual points is desirable. Explain how and when agency decisions are made and how meeting output will affect decisions. And finally, track participation and adjust your strategy as needed. From the beginning, it is important to ask yourself who should participate. While your initial outreach strategies and tactics will be effective at reaching some of those groups, they're unlikely to be successful at reaching all of them. Establish a way to track and evaluate participation and adjust your strategy if you think certain groups might be underrepresented. Meetings are widely used to achieve a basic level of community input and to exchange information with a range of residents. Public meetings are optional and are tailored to agency and community needs. The public usually prefers meetings over formal hearings because meetings do not have a public transcript and there is less pressure to speak in front of a large audience. To attract a wide audience, you should prepare a media strategy for a public meeting or hearing. In crafting your media strategy, it's important to use language that relates to people's lives. When naming your forum, writing your outreach materials, and crafting your talking points, consider how your topic directly affects people's lives. How do people talk about the issue, and why do they care about it? Take the time to test your messages to make sure that you get it right. Adequate advertising for public events always includes more than a single newspaper advertisement. Your audience may also get its information from a variety of sources, so be sure to incorporate a range of different media venues. During a public meeting, a brainstorming or visioning technique may also be used. A facilitator may be appropriate. Special accommodations must be available to meet the potential needs of people with disabilities accessing the meeting. Ground rules can keep meetings focused and constructive. Ground rules may include recognizing the legitimacy of others' concerns, arriving prepared for discussion, listening carefully and sharing discussion time, encouraging everyone to participate, identifying areas of agreement, clarifying differences, searching for common understanding, and establishing time limits for speakers. Open houses and forums strive to provide an informal, casual, and friendly atmosphere. The format focuses on issues rather than positions. People drop by at their convenience, get the information that interests them, and stay as long as they want to. Informality encourages participants who are intimidated by formal meetings. Often, the quality of responses is higher. The short time required for participation attracts people who do not want to sit through long public meetings. Participants have direct interaction with staff who might not otherwise be readily available. Making technical staff available shows that an agency is open to community input. People can receive immediate responses to questions about issues. Technical staff can reduce misinformation and rumor. Open houses can be tailored to participants' specific needs. They are held as necessary to improve public understanding of a process or project. Open houses can be combined with public meetings, with informational presentations first followed by an open house. Displays, brochures, documents, videos, and other materials can also introduce a meeting and help people prepare for it. Open houses sometimes incorporate brainstorming or focus groups. Information designed for the public is essential, such as press releases, brochures, posters, mailings, and other media. All information must be timely to give people time to fit the event into their schedules. Reminders can be sent a few days before the session. You should also use social media, mailing lists, or listservs to inform the public. You should make special efforts to solicit participation and attendance from traditionally underserved populations. An open house is a convenient place to conduct an informal survey. People can complete the survey right away or mail it back. Informal surveys let an agency obtain responses quickly and analyze the results to ascertain community interest and understanding. The fundamental way an agency can improve turnout is to make public input count in decision-making and to let people know that expressing their opinions has a real, tangible effect. People participate when an agency offers meaningful opportunities, plans strategies and logistics carefully, and has a history of using the feedback to make better plans and projects. High attendance at meetings increases a broad range of input, which allows you to identify additional issues and understand diverse perspectives. The more inclusive the process, the greater its credibility, and the more likely that it will produce usable input. Broad participation from the beginning of a process builds informed consent at its end. When people are instrumental in shaping the vision for a project or plan and have been involved in working through issues and alternatives, they are more likely to support the final results. Agency staff must be positive and responsive. This is reflected in the level of care, attention, clarity, sincerity, and honesty its staff displays in contacts with the public. Outreach efforts before, during, and after meetings are opportunities to assert a positive attitude and improve rapport with the public. Careful advanced planning is crucial. Good organization assures people that their time is not wasted and that the agency has a strong handle on what needs to be accomplished. Agencies can ask community groups about what issues to raise and what meeting dates and places are likely to draw people to participate to determine an appropriate format based on the community's traditions or preferences. Agencies that offer a variety of formats attract more participants and show that they intend to make it easy for the community to participate in transportation planning. Other methods for driving interest include games and contests, props, videos, and portable exhibits such as boards, photos, renderings, interactive displays, and maps. Active listening is one technique you can use during meetings to encourage members of the public to express their opinions and thoughts on where their regional transportation system is headed. Active listening can bolster trust between agencies and the public. When people feel like they are being listened to, they're more likely to participate in transportation planning. You can use these tips to actively listen when interacting with the public. First, focus on the speaker. Establish good eye contact and use nonverbal facial expressions to indicate that you're listening. Next, use receptive language and encourage the speaker's train of thought. Also, keep attuned to keywords. The listener should mentally gather, sort, sift, evaluate, synthesize, and order the information he or she is receiving. As well, inquire. Test your understanding by asking open-ended questions. Acknowledge. Listen for underlying feelings of the other person and reflect them back. As well, you can paraphrase and respond. Summarize back to the speaker what he or she has said to verify that the information was understood correctly. Ask questions to clarify, but don't ask leading questions and avoid giving personal opinions. Public involvement activities, whether interviews, workshops, or presentations, require good listening skills. You should practice simply being a willing receiver and gatherer of information before interpreting or reacting to that information. Agency staff should avoid inserting personal opinions. Many community members will have a need to be heard and to feel understood, especially during controversial projects. Some level of active listening is often needed throughout a project lifecycle. Active listening is especially important whenever an agency is seeking information or feedback from the community. Everyone has different access to and interest in various forms of media. As a result, it's important to use a range of strategies, both low and high tech. These two strategies are both effective and cost-effective. Websites and social media provide communication channels and information around the clock. In addition to improving communication, the internet provides instant access to planning documents and all other public information. Websites allow for a geographically dispersed audience to participate in transportation planning. People don't necessarily have to attend meetings to have their comments recorded. The interactive elements of the web, such as polls, comments, feedback forums, and social media, allow the public to communicate with us in a way that feels meaningful to them. Feedback gathered from the web can then be used at any stage in a long-range planning or project development process, and in the same way as feedback from public meetings and other outreach efforts. Surveys portray community perceptions and preferences. They can accurately report on what people know or want to know. They test whether a plan or plan element is acceptable to the public as it is being developed, or test an agency's perception of what people are thinking and reinforce decisions made through participatory programs. They can identify concerns before a public vote is scheduled. If repeated over time, surveys also test whether opinions are changing. Results can be used to guide efforts to meet public concerns and develop effective messages for public information and for a media strategy. They give meaningful clues to the likely level of public acceptance of a plan or program. Better information enhances an agency's understanding not only of public concerns, but also of the process of public involvement. You can respond to survey results by providing missing or inadequate information that did not get through to the public or was somehow misinterpreted. This adds to the discussion of issues that are important to your respondents. Agencies need specific ways to not only solicit feedback from the community, but to integrate the results into your planning or project development process. Here are some next steps for making sure you use public input as effectively as possible. First, determine how and when feedback will be used. As well, be receptive to the feedback and commit to using it in your ongoing planning and project development. Next, establish clear channels for feedback to affect agency decision-making. You should also provide well-defined avenues for information, testimony, and opinions from the public to reach agency decision-makers and policy setters. Finally, set up ways to provide further information and to receive comments and questions. Establish web and social media connections that people can easily use to obtain information and give feedback, comments, or receive support.